In 12 AD, a 12-year-old prodigy astounded the greatest minds in the Jerusalem temple, and then he disappears from the historical record completely. This timeline visualizes his known biography. Notice the marked point at 12 AD, followed by an unbroken 18-year void before he resurfaces at age 30. These are the decades when a human mind and identity are formed. During this specific window, no Roman archives track his movements, no Jewish scrolls document his existence. Even the biblical texts fall entirely silent. Yet when he finally returns to public life at age 30, he carries a highly developed philosophy of nonviolence and social equality. To understand this gestation period, we have to look at the known outputs of his teachings at age 30 and trace them back to their likely geographical inputs. Consider the ethics he introduced at the Sermon on the Mount. His emphasis on nonviolence, the deliberate rejection of material wealth, and the Golden Rule mirror the ancient teachings of Buddhism. In the 1st century, the Silk Road was an active network of trade routes, connecting Judea to the far corners of the earth. Caravans regularly moved merchants and travelers deep into the high mountains of the Himalayas. In 1887, a Russian explorer named Nicholas Nadovich reported finding a Tibetan manuscript detailing the journey of a Judean youth named Isa. According to the text, this young traveler crossed the Indus River and spent years studying the ancient Hindu scriptures, the Vedas. The text describes Isa actively fighting the rigid caste system enforced by the elite Brahmin priests, arguing instead that God lived equally in all people. This direct challenge to religious elites in India reflects the radical egalitarianism he would later preach in Jerusalem, suggesting his message was formed through a synthesis of these global experiences. That the answer might lie closer to home. Only a few miles from the Jordan River sits Qumran, a desolate canyon overlooking the Dead Sea. This was the home of the Essenes, an isolated, ascetic Jewish community. This document is part of the extensive library they left behind. Their texts reveal a brotherhood focused on ritual purity, communal isolation, and preparing for an imminent kingdom. The historical probability that Jesus studied here is high. His cousin and contemporary, John the Baptist, lived in the wilderness and is widely believed by historians to have been an Essene himself. The specific practices of the Essenes align with Jesus' later ministry. Both groups called for the rejection of personal wealth, enforced communal sharing of property, and placed a central theological focus on the ritual of baptism. The isolated caves of the desert offered a rigorous laboratory for theological development. He absorbed the extreme discipline of the Essenes, but eventually moved beyond their strict isolation to bring those practices to the public. There is a third, intensely practical scenario. In the Greek texts, Jesus is referred to as a Tekton. This specific term refers to a master builder, stonemason, or architect. He grew up in a quiet backwater village, but just 4 miles over the hill from his childhood home sat Sepphoris, a sprawling Greco-Roman metropolis. During his lost decades, Sepphoris was undergoing massive construction projects. As a Tekton, Jesus would have found steady, demanding work rebuilding this city. Working in Sepphoris meant daily immersion in an urban environment. He would have interacted with Greek philosophers, observed the harsh application of Roman law, and witnessed the debt burdens placed on everyday laborers. The cosmopolitan environment of a massive construction site in Galilee provided the cross-cultural inputs needed to shape his parables of debt, labor, and working-class struggle. If he did travel and study from other cultures, why is there no record of it in the canonical texts? Early church leaders were wary of the heresy of knowledge, the idea that a savior needed to learn from foreign cultures. They prioritized the doctrine of a divine being born with spontaneous wisdom, which meant removing records of an earthly education. At the end of those 18 years, the timeline resumes. He arrives at the muddy banks of a wilderness river to begin his life's work. Behind him lay a complex education. He carried the egalitarian ethics of the East, the ascetic discipline of the Desert Brotherhood, and the gritty political reality of a Galilean builder. He steps into the water. The student who spent decades absorbing world philosophies is replaced by an unshakable leader, ready to challenge the established order. The lost years were an essential period of alchemy. Those 18 years represent the slow, quiet development required before his public mission could begin.